Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Backline with Rob and Adam. My name is Rob Norman. I'm author of the cool improv book, Improvising Now, a Practical Guide to Modern Improv.
And my name is Adam Cawley, an alumnus of the Second City Main Stage.
That's very professional, Adam.
I guess when you're hosting, I kind of got to go by your rules, but it's decidedly less fun. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. And in addition to just dealing with my kind of tyrannical rules, how is the rest of your life?
Life's good. I'm back in Toronto,
Nice.
filming a few things, which is very nice. It's very good to feel back in that zone after a long pandemic, which is still going strong. But anytime you get to work with some fun people, that's very nice. But there's currently construction going on outside of my house, so that will be a fun ride for all of us.
Especially for the person editing. Me. You know what I did this morning, AC, is I tried to have a flash bath. You ever try and have one of those?
No. Is this
Flash bath?
a flashback in a bath?
No. Well, I guess it could be. It could be. Quick bath. You ever try to have a quick bath?
No, I actually had a bath for the first time in like 3 years this week.
And how long is that bath? What's your time? What are you clocking in
I
at?
think I probably went for like a 25-minute.
Oh,
Is that
okay.
where does that fall on your scale?
I'd say that's a quick bath.
That's a quick
It's a
bath.
very quick bath. Yeah. How many chapters of the book are you reading?
I honestly didn't do anything. I sat and I felt. I put a bath bomb in, and I put a bunch of Epsom salts, and I was very sore, and I just sat there.
I mean, that's very nice. I guess if you're not doing other things, then I guess 30 minutes seems okay. You know, I like to crack open the old Dune, Frank Herbert's Dune, read a couple chapters of that, take a quick trip to Arrakis, you know. Sometimes if I'm feeling, playful, I'll maybe watch a couple YouTube videos or something. But, you're talking about an hour. You're clocking 45 minutes to an hour there for that bath. And so this morning I was like, I'm going to do it, man. I'm going to have a nice bath, quicker, maybe closer to 30 minutes. I would describe that as a flash bath. And as I'm getting ready for this bath, phone call. Oh, you missed this email. You got to respond to this.
Oh.
So I'm getting ready for this podcast. I'm like, the bath is out of the question. And now I need to have a shower. And it was just a sad shower. I was just a grown man standing in a giant puddle of water, having a shower, dreaming of a bath that I missed this morning. So if I'm a little bit testy, please forgive me.
You ever drop that phone in your bath?
Never drop that phone. Never drop that phone. Very careful about that.
Let me ask you this. Two things. Number one, should I mute my mic as construction is happening when I'm not talking?
No.
Okay.
That would be terrible.
That would be terrible. Question two, you reread a lot of things, right? Because you've read Dune.
I haven't read Dune.
Oh. I assumed you, but have you reread books?
Yeah, I would reread a book if I really, really loved it. Like, my favorite book is Cats Created by Kurt Vonnegut, so I've read that multiple times. But for the most part, I read nonfiction, and once you got it, you kind of got it.
Yeah. I was just thinking, I assumed you had already read Dune, and I was wondering, for people who read fiction and they like reread a book, do you like visualize everything the same, or is it like brand new? Because like when you rewatch a show or a movie, it's like everything's given to you, right? It's all the same. But if you reread like 3 years later, what is that experience like?
I mean, I have reread books that I read as a child, and the thing that was so pleasurable about it was going back to a universe that I remembered, a world I remembered, the characters who I loved. I got to hang out with them again. So I think it is kind of that same feeling of nostalgia. I don't think you're coming back to it and being like, the characters I imagined all of a sudden have an eye patch and a hook for a hand. I think
No.
I think for the most part, you leave them as is, which is also kind of nice because, when I was a kid, I used to read the series of books, which are these Dragonlance novels. They were like an offshoot of Dungeons and Dragons. And throughout that story, a lot of characters die. And I remember being like 12 and 13 and just bawling because they got offed. And they wrote other books about those characters, but like it didn't feel the same because it was like they were dead.
Right.
I was like, I don't want to hear stories about them. But going back and rereading the original story when they were alive, it was like time traveling. And you get to be with your old friend who had passed away. It was an interesting.
Weird.
Interesting
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, well, that's the podcast. 45 minutes of talking about are books the same, but is improv the same? And that's the big question, AC. This week we are following up on a big conversation that we are having in Improv 2. We talked about this before. This is the world famous Improv 2 prerequisite of Improv 3, and the kind of follow up, some might say, to Improv 1. And so I'm teaching this class with mostly beginners, and there's a lot of basic ideas and concepts that I have to revisit because they're experiencing them for the first time. And so almost like rereading a book that you read in your childhood, we're kind of coming back to some old ideas and premises that maybe you and I haven't thought of for a long time, or we discarded completely. And this week I wanted to talk a little bit about justification. Big term.
Can you explain to me why?
Classic term. What do you mean?
Why do you want to talk about justification? I don't get it.
It's a bit. I'll answer it anyways. But yeah, I think justification is one of the cornerstones of improv. It's something you've probably talked a lot about in the beginnings of your improv journey, and you probably don't talk about it a lot now. You don't think about justifying a lot. It's just kind of something that you do. So, AC, justification, how would you explain what it is and how it works?
I mean, especially in an improv context, justification is basically explaining why a choice was made. So a choice was made, and either the performer feels like, uh-oh, no one's on the same train as me, or, uh-oh, I think what I just said contradicts what we've all talked about before. Uh-oh. So then you explain and make sense of what has previously either been interrupted or not explained properly, but it's basically explaining why an improv move was made.
Yeah, and improv move, yes, most often what we would call kind of mistake. I say that with italics, a mistake in improv. So information that maybe is illogical or contradicts what was said before. You and I are doing a scene. At the same time, I say that your name is Norm. You say your name is Rob. And we go, uh-oh, this is a problem. How can you have two first names? And we go, oh, yeah, my name is Norm Roberts. And people call me Rob as a nickname. And everyone in the audience goes, yay, crisis averted.
Yeah, because it's always, I think there's so many improv tropes that I think globally we all experience. And one of them is what you just brought up. And someone goes, oh, I love when you call me by my middle name. And everyone's like, whoa, okay, makes sense. Okay, I'm back in. But it feels like that move, it's like one of those things of like when two people walk to the center of the stage and both grab the same chair. And then it's like, oh, did you want to sit here? Oh, did you want to see? No, go ahead. It's just ingrained. It's like our lizard improv brain. These things just happen to us, and we enjoy the ride.
Mm-hmm. So let's start with the steel man here. Let's give justification its just desserts. Are you thinking of that restaurant that you would go to in high school?
It's so funny because I never went there and I never really understood why that was a thing. But it was definitely like, you're just too young to drink. You can't go to a bar and you probably don't have enough money to go to a nice restaurant. So you go to this place called Just Desserts and, no mystery. It was Just Desserts. And it seemed to be the de facto date night. But it feels like an odd thing to take a date to when you're chowing down on a banana split.
Yeah, and I like it feels definitely like this is only in the Toronto suburbs. Maybe in the rest of North America there are different Just Desserts, but for sure we grew up in different towns. And I was just like, for sure, Adam had a Just Desserts. For sure, this was the date night spot you would take someone. Anyways.
Well, I never did, but definitely tons of dates. So many dates. So I took people everywhere.
So you and your mom were busy then.
She had a car, so...
So can we talk a little bit about why justification is useful?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of basic, but I think a good reminder that it's like, as improvisers, we don't have anything. We're responsible for everything. There's no playbill explaining, the playwright's intention or character names. There's no sets. There's no costumes. There's no scripts. We ask the performers to do everything improvised. You're responsible to do everything improvised. So it's hard.
Yeah, and I think... Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Well, I was going to say that justification, like, I think of it like you're playing a real nice game of Tetris. And then one piece comes down and you're like, oh, it's not fitting. Like, now there's a hole in my solid Tetris build. And justification kind of, we just make that piece fit. And it plugs that hole to make everything coherent. And justification, when done correctly, I think that's what happens, is that through improv, we've so far managed to create this coherent story. And then at one point, you're like, ooh, something sticks out that takes the audience and the performers out of it. And justification can hopefully put that piece back where it belongs.
Yeah, and justification is ultimately about owning mistakes. And improv, for most improvisers, is all about making mistakes, taking risks, and getting it wrong. Something like short-form improvisation, those games are designed to create mistakes, to embed them into your scene, and force you to take the things that don't fit and kind of weave them into the tapestry of the story that you're telling. Within long-form improvisation, there is no one artificially creating mistakes. If you're new to long form, you're going to make them on your own. But for you and I, we're not probably going to make a ton of mistakes when we improvise. And so we have to find our disorder in other places. We have to find that kind of randomness in another way. And that might be talking to an audience member or going out into the audience or, making a big dumb choice that you never think will work, or climbing up to the top of the chairs and doing a trust fall backwards. Like, those are the things that we have to do when you don't have a lot of mistakes naturally in your improv scene. But justification is ultimately what I think most people would think of when they think of improvisation. Like in a children's show, if you're like, oh, we're making a cake of a unicorn. Oh no, the horn fell off. What do we do? Okay, well, it's a Pegasus now. Yay, the birthday party is saved. Like, incorporating mistake into the overall design and pretending that it was always supposed to be there, I think ultimately is what improv is, or is supposed to be.
Yeah, and I think it can also be very impressive to... It's like getting caught and having an instant lie and being like, holy shit, how did you come up with that? Right? You're in the moment and you're performing with a partner in front of an audience, and basically everyone stops and says, we remember what happened before, you fucked up. And then you turn to the audience and go, well, that's because I've always been a ghost. And everyone's like, whoa, how did you come up with that? That it can lead to like applause breaks, because it feels like we've convinced the audience we are daredevils, we are amazing at this. And then they watch and they say, oh, cool, I'll pay $15 to come and watch you do that. And it's as if you've jumped out of the plane and your chute doesn't open. Everyone's like, see, you don't know what you're doing. And then all of a sudden you like take off your pants and use it as a secondary parachute and glide down to the ground. And they're like, whoa, that's even more impressive than the first thing you were going to do. So justification, when used correctly, it can be the thing that people remember your scene about. Remember about your scene. Yeah.
Well, and there's a kind of authenticity to it. I think there's this line from Fight Club where the main character, Jack, is talking about his love of the IKEA catalog. He kind of like has this like speech where he like sexualizes cups. And the thing he likes about these IKEA cups is that they were hand blown, and you can tell because in the actual glass there's these little air bubble imperfections, which proves it was handmade as opposed to made in a factory, which would have been perfect. And so for him in that moment, it's the air bubble that is the valuable part about this glassware he's interested in.
Never seen it.
Well, you
all.
could see it. I've seen that movie like 70 times.
Whoa,
So that would be an example of a movie I saw a lot in high school. But yeah, so that particular piece for us is, you have a funny scene with a funny premise. But the fact that you have a mistake, we saw the mistake, and you were able to recover makes it different than sketch, or maybe even better than sketch, because you were able to recover, and that would be impossible in any other art form, whether that be stand-up, sketch, anything written down. You wouldn't be able to do what you just did. The final thing I'll just tag on to what you said here is it's also a source of comedy. Like, if we think about the comedic engine of something like Shoulda Said, justification is why this is funny. So Shoulda Said is just, or New Choice, or Take That Back, whatever you want to call it, is a short form game where you and I improvise, and then someone from the side says Shoulda Said, and then we have to change our answer and create a new answer. And usually the shoulda saids come fast and furious, so you're just you're cycling through a whole bunch of options, and then you end up on an answer that maybe you wouldn't have normally chosen, and it probably is a mistake. It probably goes outside the rules of the scene. And so that's funny. People like that. People like seeing you have chaos, fumble. Maybe you're even laughing as you're struggling to think of the answer. You say the answer, it's clearly wrong, and then the audience laughs, you laugh, and your scene partner laughs. That could be an engine for you in a short form game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's all part of what makes improv special, right? It's, as you mentioned, like it's kind of just an underlining or a highlighting of the whole premise of this, that we're making this up. Shit's gonna go wrong, but that's okay. Watch us deal. And I think that's the one of the main compliments I think improvisers get. One is, was that written? And two is, I don't know how you guys do that. I don't know how you get up there and do that without a plan, without, like, I would not know what to do. And to have something literally go wrong, not just a regular improv scene, but to go wrong and be able to handle that is a super impressive feat. And I think is what attracts a lot of people to improv, is that in the face of adversity, you managed.
Yeah. And I think you and I have been doing this for a long time, and maybe we've kind of forgotten about how incredible that is. The only time I really remember how stressful it is about someone making a mistake and being unsure if they're going to be able to recover, it's not when I'm on stage. It's not when you're on stage. It's not when the stakes are personal for me, because I'm like, well, I'll figure it out. Adam will figure it out. No problem. It's anytime I'm directing a show. That's when I feel those feelings. They're on behalf of someone else. Because if something goes wrong, I can't run up on stage and just improvise and get it back on track. I'm trusting in someone else that they can do it, and I know they can on some level. Intellectually, I understand that, but emotionally, I feel that anxiety as if I'm improvising for the first time. I have to like pace before a show because I'm not sure how it's going to go.
Well, it feels like
anyways.
But just to that point, like, this is a different topic, I suppose, but the idea of you not being concerned about us or whatever it is, it's when you are not able to help. And I think this is where rehearsing and coaching is so valuable, because if I'm on a team and we just meet once a week to perform, once a month, whatever it is, I will have those similar feelings of, I don't really know if this person like is going to recover or they need help. I don't know. But just through rehearsals, through massive amounts of reps, you just start to know people better. And I've seen so many times someone, need justification, and they're able to provide it themselves, but other people on the team rush to fix it because they are so uncomfortable in either the silence or those moments of mystery. And I think that's what's so interesting is it kind of feels like the amount of people that are on this team, they all feel different levels of anxiety with justification. Some feel more comfortable with not needing it, and some are like, we have to have it or this whole thing is blown.
Or to go even deeper on this, the anxiety isn't with the justification. The anxiety is with the mistake. They can't let the mistake just live. You know, for you and I, if you and I were performing and we both said a name at the exact same time, or you said the wrong name in a show, I would never correct you. I would just let it go. And I would be like, okay, it's his middle name. That's what I would think in my head. And if it was his middle name, if it was real life, if I was like, okay, Michael, let's do this. I'm not going to be like, oh, because Michael's your middle name, Adam Michael Gawley. I'm not going to do that because we both know what your middle name is. So why would my character do that? But there are many people who would see that mistake and feel so much shame about it that they would rush to cover it up. And sometimes you and I will do a show where things are they're just shit. Like nothing makes sense, or there's a big confusing part to it. And usually you and I would just sit in that mistake until we figure it out in a kind of graceful way. Because I don't think the audience is as anxious about the mistake as we are. I don't think they're paying as close attention to the story as we are. But we would figure that out down the line. 5 minutes from now, we're going to figure out the perfect solution. We don't need to figure it out right in this moment.
Well, I think we talked about this last week, but the counting to 20 game, right? Your favorite. Mm-hmm. You're the first person I know to run a 3-hour workshop on counting to 20. It was great.
I charge $7,000.
And it's worth it. But in all honesty, part of the reason I like this game is it teaches not to panic in mistake mode. And what we often ask students to do is, because you'll see it, and this is the game where, as a collective, the goal for the group is to count to 20. Every individual only responsible for one number at a time. However, if 2 people speak at the same time, you have to go back down to 0 and count to 20 again. What?
Which is very naughty if you say it at the same time. Very naughty. Don't do that.
And off the top, you usually see people go, oh, and they get really bummed out, and then they try again, and then they get to like 18, and then speak at the same time, oh, and they make huge faces and huge gasps and everything. And the lesson is, how can we speak at the same time and not show the audience we've made a mistake? How can we just let it happen? Because the audience often has no idea what we're trying to attempt or what we have up our sleeves. But as soon as we show them physically or verbally, but especially physically when you're not in a scene and something goes wrong, just to be aware of your body language, because the audience is looking to you and being like, uh-oh, something's gone wrong here. I'll give you a quick story. In a show, maybe you're in the show, but someone goes to suite. They trip. Audience has a little snicker. People in the back line are like, that person, I hope they're okay. Oh, they're okay, fine. Next person that goes to do sweep edit, they just trip a little harder. Next person falls over as they sweep. And all of a sudden the audience is like, oh, you're the troop that falls when you edit. I love this. But if we had tried to make a big deal of this mistake and be, oh my God, we're so sorry. Oh, we tripped. Oh my God. The audience is going to be like, well, you guys all fucked up. But not letting them in on the mistake is the first part of thinking, what are our options here in justification?
Yeah, and improv is one of the few spaces where you can make a mistake and it doesn't matter. And if a mistake doesn't matter, then you don't have to apologize or be sad that it happened, you can lean into that mistake. And that's something. That's a structure. So repeating a mistake becomes a kind of structure for us. 100. It's a very advanced form of justification. Absolutely. We've been very kind to justification in the first half, which I think we were obliged to do. But now let's talk about the other part of this, which is the bad version of justification. I think like most of these things, like yes and, like justification, like notes on listening, within moderation, I think you and I, for the most part, think it's very, very useful. But I think there can be a point when justification become dogmatic, or the foundational teachings around justification can yield results that I don't think create a kind of optimal play for the performers or for the audience. So what's the difference between justifying in a scene and over-explaining in a scene, or explaining yourself out of the scene?
Yeah, I mean, like, if something is illogical, something needs correction to help the scene advance because people are very confused, your partner's confused, it's going to be like we're already in a situation where people are being taken out of the scene. Great. Sometimes a little justification can help get us back on course. But it can also be a very lazy crutch at the slightest sense of mystery or uncertainty. A little flame comes up of potential and we stomp it out. Because I don't know where this new quote-unquote mistake will lead us. So instead, I'm going to hold on to what we already had. I don't want to explore any further. I'm going to quickly say, the reason that happened is because when we were young, you did this to me, and that means that's why I'm jealous of you and your new girlfriend, and that's why we're here in this volcano. And it just removes any sense of wonder, any sense of potential. And simply an idea that you brought up just a couple seconds ago, the idea of repeating a behavior, that is an instant form of justification. So we take someone, we've all had the old walk through a table. You ever walk through an improv table, Rob?
Me personally, no. But I've watched other people like yourself do it, yeah.
Oh, man, I've walked through tables. I've walked through chairs, desks. Big problem for me, desks.
Sometimes people, sometimes other cast members.
Yeah, it's a big problem. But instead of, I walk through a desk and you go, oh, I guess you can just walk through desks now. Well, and I say, oh, shit, I just walked through a desk. My mom's in the audience. What am I going to say? And goes back to my original justification. It's because I'm a ghost. I am a ghost, and that's why. And I died 10 years ago because that's when we first met at the graveyard. And remember, and we just explained that I'm a ghost, and the audience is all right. It's like, fine, you're a ghost. Jesus Christ, just chill out. The other option, I walk through a desk. As an improviser, I'm like, that's an odd laugh from the audience or an odd face from my scene partner. I think I just fucking walked through a desk again. All right. Well, the next thing I'm going to do is walk through something else. And all of a sudden, the audience goes from, he made a mistake, look at him, to, oh, he walks through things. Huh. Very cool. I wonder what else is going to happen. So, long story short, is the use of justification is very valuable. But when we use it out of fear, I think that's when it really puts our scenes at a disadvantage and puts the performers at a place of like, let's just get through this scene. I don't want to explore anymore. I don't want to take any more chances. We're on a pretty good roll here. But if I follow you down this path, it may not work out. So therefore, I'm going to justify it. I'm going to patch it up and move on.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like sometimes justification can be used not to correct a kind of mistake or legitimate confusion, but to control what's happening, to control the story. You always do that. You always say that, we did this last time. Like like these kinds of justifications about behavior or who you are or how you treat me usually is a way to feel safe within the chaos of improvising. But if you have that much discomfort while improvising, I don't know how you can have fun or how an audience can have fun. Like, there has to be a kind of limit for us to say, yes, this is a video game. On the lower right-hand side, there's a map of the places that you've explored. There's a big foggy part of your map, and as you go deeper into the fog, it lights up, and then you can see the mountains or the river or whatever else it is. And sometimes you meet an enemy that's too strong, and they get you down to 1 heart, and you run back to your home base, the safe part of the map that you recognize. That, to me, is improvising every single time, which is, I'm going into the fog, I'm looking for something. Oh, maybe I found some treasure. That's awesome. Sometimes I'll go into a piece of the fog and be like, ooh, we went too fast, too soon, too quickly. I don't know what's happening. I have to kind of come back to this home base. But if you can't improvise unless all of the map is lit up for you, why are we improvising at that point? Because that's the exciting part. The exciting part is someone taking a step, reaching for a stair that doesn't exist yet, and hoping that it forms under your feet. That's what improvising is every single time. Every time you open your mouth, you're kind of reaching for this invisible step. So when justification is used in that way, it kind of just breaks my heart. Is that too much? Is that an overstatement? Is that too dramatic?
No, the reason you say that is because you... No, I think it is the simple, like, then write it down. Like, if you're so in need to explain the reasons for everything, write it down and tell people so nothing can go wrong for you. But yeah, it's like for very beginner improvisers, when you think of, I've got some good jokes I want to say in this next scene, right? You're not doing the thing you signed up to do. I'm taking an improv class, and I'm going to cheat my way through it. I'm going to see if I can improvise the least amount possible. Well, you're not doing the thing you're supposed to do. And part of the thing you're supposed to do is be okay with that fog. Go into that fog with your partner and be like, let's see what's there. Not, the reason we go into the fog is because of this. And what we're going to see there is this. It's a bummer.
Yeah, the idea isn't to cope with your... It's not about finding coping mechanisms to endure the discomfort of improvising. It is about standing on stage and suffering through not knowing. Because you and I, while we improvise, do I like, being flown to another country, being part of the main stage show on Friday, headlining a festival, not having any resources, being exhausted from teaching, stepping on stage with you and performing, specifically performing with you? Do not enjoy that part.
Wait,
right? But that's the challenge. And I love that challenge. I love going, there is a very good chance that I don't pull this off. That I walk out into the fog and I just get eaten by a dragon or whatever. And I'm just dead and I have to start all over again. Except this is real life. I have to fly home in shame now. So I understand where the discomfort comes from, where the judgment comes from, where the shame comes from. But justification doesn't protect you from any of those things. It makes you feel like you're protected. But it actually makes you more vulnerable. Let me take a step back. So if I were to say, like, I would advise intermediate to advanced students, I would invite them to be very careful about starting scenes by explaining something. Because when you get in a rut, when you have a certain kind of momentum, it's often very hard to get out of that space. So if I start in an emotional way, if I'm sad with you, it's very likely that I will continue being sad with you, Adam, because it's what I'm doing, so I might as well do more of it. It's the only option I have. But if I start the scene by explaining what's happening or why you're behaving in this way, it's very unlikely while I'm explaining all the time that I stop explaining and I start feeling something randomly. It's just not how our physiology works. You don't start from a place of safety and then suddenly drop into an emotion. But if you're feeling emotion, it's quite likely that emotion will grow or continue just because that emotion serves a purpose. You're searching for some kind of answer. If you're hurt and you're crying and you're in pain, your body is saying, find a way to not feel this way anymore. Remove the thing that's causing you pain. So I think explaining and justifying is a kind of life vest. It's a life preserver that seems that it's going to save you. But if you just learn how to swim, you'll be much better. You'll do much better if you know how to swim.
Yeah, and I think it comes with time, right? It comes with comfort. And I think the more you improvise, the more you get on stage, the more you start to enjoy that danger that you were talking about. And it's natural that you want to justify when you're coming up. You want to get through this. You want to look around and be like, I did okay. I survived. Mm-hmm. And I think it's up to every individual to find out how to kind of self-assess. How much do I rely on this? And can I maybe try one scene tonight where I don't do that? Maybe. Mm-hmm. And then just see how that feels.
Yeah, explain to people that you will feel discomfort not knowing, but it doesn't mean you have to suffer. Which is, I guess, a little bit like Buddhism 101, but the idea that you're going to feel discomfort not knowing, but that doesn't have to be painful for you. You can make amends with the discomfort and actually start to like it over time. You go, that's part of the challenge. It's part of the joy. Can I pull this off? I do have one final question for you, AC, which is, when you're improvising and you're in a scene, can you just talk me through the kinds of things that, like, oh, this part of the scene doesn't make sense. That's okay. But when this stops making sense, that's when I need to justify. Like, when is it appropriate to explain a loose thread, and when do we leave that loose thread, or when do we leave it as mystery or chaos? What's the difference for you?
I mean, I don't know about if I had some time to sit down and think on that, I might think of a different answer, but my gut is simply like, well, is the audience okay with it? Is your scene partner okay with it? Because if they're enjoying it, then I'm fine, right? If I'm in a scene with you and every little while I go over to an imaginary drawer and I open it and I go, oh no, oh boy. And then I come back to you and I do that again later on in the scene and the audience keeps laughing or enjoying it, that's fine. Then I don't need to justify that. If I'm doing something and the audience, you can get a sense, you can get the feeling, or sometimes it's audible and you're just like, this is not enjoyable for my scene partner or the audience. Well, maybe I should give this a little context to help people get on board. So I might need to justify what's in that drawer, what's making me feel this way. But I think about Mr. Bean, right? Mr. Bean doesn't really talk. Mr. Bean just does things. So one of the first Mr. Beans ever was the classic one, trying to get in from his suit to his swimsuit at the beach. But there's a dude beside him. He doesn't want to get naked in front of this dude. He's shy. So he tries to put on his bathing suit without taking off his suit. I think it's the scene that like brought him to stardom. But why is he at the beach? Why doesn't he go back into his car? Did he arrive by car? I don't know. Why aren't there any change rooms at this beach? What kind of beach is this? Is this a private beach, a public beach? Who's this dude? Why isn't this dude working? What day of the week is it? If it's Saturday, where's the rest of the families? Who gives a shit? No one cares because everyone's watching this dude's behavior. And the fact that he wants his swimsuit on without taking off his clothes, that's his goal that he keeps working towards. No one cares if it's justified or not. We're enjoying watching this struggle. We have no idea why. What was his childhood like? Why does he feel so much body shame? I don't know. But the audience is laughing. They're enjoying it. So I'm okay. I don't need it. The behavior, the thing that you can actually see, is happening. So that's what I think about Mr. Bean and the lack of justification, but the extreme amount of behavior.
So I haven't really put much thought into this either, but listening to you talk, it's got a lot of things bubbling. I feel like the reason why that scene with Mr. Bean is so successful, because you're right, there's a lot of questions about this sketch. But I think the important part is that Mr. Bean is so consistent. It's a non-speaking character who is basically doing clown work. He doesn't tell us anything about him, but his behaviors are so consistent. He doesn't really stray from his core. And so we feel kind of safety within that. I would argue, or not argue, but maybe suggest that things like the environment having a kind of lack of consistency, or your object work having a lack of consistency, I don't think these are things that are going to make your scene go terribly wrong. I feel like there's probably some quick fixes to that can be justified really quickly, and even if you skip that, probably the scene will continue on without any kind of hiccup, provided that the characters you are playing are consistent. Because it's about the behavior, right? If our behavior is real and truthful and follows a pattern, then I think the audience is going to feel safe, and then the rest of the details don't matter as much. If our behavior is erratic, if our behavior doesn't make sense, if we're saying things that seem to contradict who we are, that's when I think we have to pull the brakes and go, whoa, stop the scene. What's going on here? Because this doesn't make any sense anymore. I love you. I'm trying to get you to marry me. And then all of a sudden I'm yelling at you and then I'm asking you to marry me again. Whoa, that's weird. It's just too much. It's just too confusing. There's this book called Theater of the Mind, I believe it's called. And it's just about the tricks our mind play on us. All sorts of things. For example, how your eyesight works or cognitive bias. But there's this one part that I think about all the time in improv, and I've mentioned this before in the podcast, but the scientists did an experiment where they had this box, very simple, almost like an Atari game, very basic, lo-fi video game. It's not a video game, it's just shapes moving on a computer screen. And there's a triangle and a square and a circle. And basically the triangle, the square, and the circle, they randomly enter the box and then randomly leave the box. Sometimes all together, sometimes separately. And they asked people what they saw. And nobody who was watching that presentation saw shapes leaving the box. No one said, oh, I counted, the triangle left 33 times, the circle left 5 times. Everybody came back saying, oh, wow, it's obviously a mother and a stepdad, and they're having a problem. And the kid, who's a circle, is in trouble. They're doing drugs. And so they were fighting back and forth. Their brains instantly anthropomorphized the shapes and told the whole story. And so I think for the most part, we can handle a lot of things being stripped down or not necessarily having the answers. We'll fill in the blanks as long as the puzzle pieces that we do have are simple enough and not contradicting each other. I think the audience is going to have a rich inner life, even if you aren't standing there being like, we are brothers and our dad treated us badly and now we have trust issues. They'll do that work. You don't need to say it out loud.
Yeah, I mean, how many TV shows don't end all wrapped up and you can't stop talking about it? What do you think happened? What do you think's next? It's exciting, right? You think of the end of Inception, right? You've got that totem spinning. If they just were like, 5 minutes later, that totem fell. Like, oh, well, no need to think about that anymore. It's done.
Or the opposite in Super Mario 2 for Nintendo, where Mario literally wakes up and goes, "Wow, what a crazy dream."
You know, there's a soap opera called Dallas. I think they tried to remake it, but it's from like the late 70s, early 80s. A lot of Simpsons references are from Dallas. Like Who Shot Mr. Burns is all Who Shot JR. Anyway, what's his name? He was on the dad on Step by Step. Anyway, you'd know him. But he was like the main guy. And then some contract stuff happened and he just left the show. And they were like, oh, well, we'll continue on. And then he's like, you know what? I'm going to come back to the show. And so the first episode of the following season, a woman wakes up and it was like, it was all a dream. That whole season just didn't count. And again, they do that in Simpsons where Smithers wakes up and Mr. Burns is in the shower. He's like, Mr. Burns, I thought you were dead. He's like, no, I'm alive and I run the F1 Formula One racing car. Anyway, interesting how different people handle Justification.
Absolutely. Well, that's our thoughts on Justification, folks. We'd love to hear what you've been thinking about. Do you still teach Justification? Are you talking about it? You know, AC, we're getting a lot of great feedback on YouTube, a lot of messages on our Facebook, our Instagram, Twitter, at the Backline Pod. Very, very exciting hearing people just hit us back. It feels like our audience was just come back alive now that we're making new episodes. So it's really cool hearing all your thoughts and comments. But is there a cool thing that you are thinking about on stage? Or perhaps even, dare I say, off stage, AC?
There's a few things that really get me going.
Oh, then never mind. This is
Sorry?
Too personal. Too personal.
Sports. We all know sports. Drum and bass. A lot of good music, good pals hanging out. But one thing that gets me really excited is movie trailers. I love a good movie trailer. And years ago, Topher Grace from that 70s show fame took the prequels of Star Wars and made like one movie and like changed a lot of things about it, like took the Trade Federation's dialogue, made them alien dialogue, and then used subtitles to make the story better. So a lot of things. But anyway, also he created a trailer for the entire Skywalker saga called Always. And he cut it together. And man, oh man, is it a fun watch. I could just, like, so many people recreate Star Wars trailers, but it's not just that, like, any movie trailer I love. So if you're in the need for a big goosebumpy watch, put your headphones in and check out Always, the Star Wars trailer.
I might say, and you and I, when we go see movies, we're very good about this. But I have other movie goers that I attend the cinema with who don't understand this. But the trailers before the movie is the best part of going to the movies, for sure. Because it's so exciting. And like, if you get a movie that you're excited about and you get to see like little clips of it, oof. I have a friend who like goes on YouTube and seeks it out. I don't do any of that. I wait to sit in the movie theater.
You find out what the trailer is before you go?
Like there's this Robert Pattinson, the Batman movie. And so I have a friend who would, like, the day they launched the trailer, he would go on YouTube and he would have watched like 12 different cuts and talked about the breakdown of the shots and who's in it and all the fan theories. And that's how he interacts with projects that he's excited about. I am not that meticulous, so I don't do any of that work. I actually prefer not to know. And I forget about it. And so I sit in the theater and go, oh, they're making a new Batman? Oh, this actually looks really cool. That was really exciting and really fun. I know so little. I'm so oblivious that it's like a movie has just popped into existence right then and there for me. And then every once in a while you see a movie where you're like, oh, I would never seek this out, but it looks so cool. And even if I don't see it, trailers are they're so good at telling compact stories. It's pretty much like you've watched the movie. So you don't even really need to see it. You're like, I kind of get it. That looks really great. Anywho, my cool thing.
Uh-huh.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
3 weeks ago, perhaps. I mentioned about a lifelong goal I have, which is to change our YouTube URL to youtube.com/bingo bongo improv time. And YouTube won't let me have this website address unless we have 100 followers. And so I made a call to our folks out in the ether for people to subscribe to our channel. And so many people came through for me. It was great. Like that call to action, Lindsay, Nash, Matt Francis in Connecticut, Sashin, Kungi Gunda, Alex from Sacramento, my good friend Gina Phillips, all these folks subscribing, and it just brightened my day this morning. So thank you so much, folks, for doing that. If you haven't done it, it would mean the world to me to type in the words youtube.com/bingo bongo improv time. It would mean the world to me. So that's my cool thing, asking for help in getting it.
It's interesting that in this partnership, I had no say in Bingo Bongo Improv. I was not consulted at all, and am forced to go along with this odd desire from my co-host.
You know what's weird too is I didn't know I wanted it until we were on the podcast and I was talking about it. And then when I opened my mouth and the words Bingo Bongo Improv Time came out, I just felt that feels right, and it feels like it's the right decision for both of us. So I'm glad you agree.
Wow. A lot of justifying there.